We have finally got to the end of the last day of questioning of phase one of tranche one, the final day of questioning of the undercover police officer Mark Jenner, who was Mark Cassidy, infiltrated a number of groups, including the Colin Roach Centre, Anti-Fascist Action, Red Action, the Independent Working Class Association, numerous campaigns for police accountability and for justice. Between the years of 1995 and 2000, he also deceived a woman called Alison into a 5-year relationship whilst being married to a woman called S. I'm joined with Paul Heron from the Public Order Interest Publish. What's the name of your organisation again?
The Public Interest Law Centre.
That's it, one Public Interest Law Centre. What have you made of what we've heard?
Well, it's 3 days. I think in many ways I feel like we could split it into almost two parts. A sort of political part and then the relationship part. Not to say that Alison and the Catterick are not political, very much are. The first part, I would say, and I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are as someone who sat through the 3 days. The kind of the first part is my impressions of Mark Jenner is very much a copper's copper. He's told to do ABC, and he does ABC. I also felt there was no real reflection, insight into his behaviour or any issues that he did. I think many standout issues, but I think one of the standouts was seeing whether it's the Colin Roach Centre, whether it's the Brian Higgins Defence Campaign, whether it's family justice campaigns, whether it's lawyers who represent those who've been victims of the state, victims of the police, is very much just anti-police. Everyone's just anti-police. Everything is just anti-police. And anyone who dares criticise or question or raise an issue about the police is just anti-police. And I thought that was quite a significant kind of takeaway for me.
Especially when it coupled with his view that the police can do no wrong.
Very much. I mean, that was
that was the line, wasn't it?
That was one of the lines. Yeah, there was a couple of kind of lines where you just like, there's no insight here. Another big issue, of course, and it's been a big issue in the inquiry, is the issue of obviously racism of the police and institutional racism. And
we didn't like that.
I know there was definitely not a like of that, or certainly a major pushback on that. And what was striking to me is not so much his reaction, which sadly I wasn't surprised about. What was, I suppose, surprising, maybe not surprising, but where there was very little, as far as he was concerned or what he reported, there was very little kind of feedback or reflection by the police themselves of the Macpherson definition of Macpherson inquiry that doesn't appear to be beyond the, I mean, obviously the tone was set from the top with Condon, of course, but there doesn't appear to have been the police taking on board anything from the Macpherson, certainly in terms of not just in practical measures since then, but it doesn't appear, if we take Jenner's evidence as fact, was the fact that there was no discussion afterwards, no discussion in the SDS, no discussion apparently in the police about the conclusions of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. No attempt at it at all. That's the impression I got from it. Maybe there was, but that was certainly the impression I got from it there. And then I think if you like, the second stage was looking at the relationship side of things with Alison and the core participant S. Jenner seemed to be, in my opinion, again, more, as the evidence went through, more apologetic, more. What do you?
I mean, I think it was like overnight, wasn't it? I mean, the beginning of the questioning about his relationship with Alison yesterday, he came across as a callous, heartless bastard, and then today there seemed to be an attempt of him trying to show some sort of humanity. I think he did that very clumsily, but I think he did try to.
I think that's a fair comment. And I think you can contrast that with the first 2 days of his evidence, where there was definitely. What was lacking was a real insight or reflection. It was like almost, as I said before, police officer, you do ABC. He's gone off and done ABC, and he didn't see any fault in that whatsoever. What I would, which I've obviously I don't know whether we're going to get, but I think even if these foot soldiers have done lots of things wrong, which they have, and they've interfered in people's lives, they've had relationships, they've cast aspersions, they've written reports which are clearly going to define people for a whole generation, potentially for a whole lifetime, about them being violent or this or that, is the fact that there was, what I would have liked to have seen is him kind of being a bit more open about managers, about their role and those above. It began today that it was clear that managers did, I think, start to know, or did know, that there was that he was living with an activist, with Alison. There was that.
I think it was very clear, particularly, I mean, like, obviously Bob Lambert did, and it was clear that Bob Lambert knew bloody everything about it. But I mean, certainly Stephen Tilley, that seemed very clear from what we saw about him saying about Touchy Subject and Psycho Dream, that they were impeachable in this area of, would they need a fake girlfriend to walk on the scene? They wouldn't. They were impeachable in that area because of the lifestyle choices they had made.
And I think that's going to be that evidence potentially is going to be useful as we go into module 2. Later next year in the summer, because I think it's so important that, as much as the foot soldiers are held to account, absolutely held to account, both by the women, the wives, and all the justice campaigns, and all campaigners in that sense, because it is a kind of secret police and they should be held account. But there are people who were happy with the results that were coming through from these. No one was ever told, no, don't report on that, or don't report on this. And I'm looking forward to that. One other point I would say, Tom, is the importance of where when HM15 was sending through his intelligence, the quality of that intelligence was really questionable, actually.
It's fucking shite. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, one of the things that irritated me, it was
I would say questionable.
Yeah. I'd say shite. Because it was put to him that he was a deep diver, that he was a deep swimmer, that because of his relationship, he was a deep diver. And like, I guess in terms of his personal relationship, that would be the case. Yeah. But in terms of the intelligence that he was producing on his targets, and the political intelligence, the reports that he was producing, it's very fucking shallow. I mean, literally, what he kept saying is that, well, this is really exaggerated because that's what Mark Metcalf told me down the pub. Yeah. And I reported it verbatim.
What's worrying about it is the fact that what's clear is the intelligence was second, sometimes third hand, sometimes gossip or whatever that they'd heard.
Sometimes 6 points deep. I think mostly 6 points deep, you got the impression.
There probably was. But what the worrying part of it was that the fact that was then turned into reports that kind of become fact.
Yeah,
and then so people who might be campaigners, might be even involved in self-defense against NF or BNP attacks, for instance. Many of my clients could fit that description. We're described as violent. We're described as and that goes onto the record. So if you play that out, it becomes like, well, when police potentially would visit, if they were to visit someone's home, watch out, this person is violent or very violent or whatever. I think the other thing that was
the point is that information doesn't just end up inside Special Branch or inside the SDS or inside Special Branch. This goes on Police National Computer. Right. This is something that every police officer can access whenever they deal with you. So someone like Steve Headley, for example, who, despite the fact that Mark Jenner said he never saw him be violent, but he had a reputation. A reputation based on what? Who knows? Chat down the pub, baby.
That reputation is then put on a document that says this person is violent, which then goes on a police computer, and it stays there. And it's like, well, how do you get that altered? How do you get it changed?
And the real world difference with this is that when you do have an interaction with the police, they're ready to use violence on you. Let's be no bones about this. That's what it means. It means that the cops have got their hand on their taser, they've got their hand on their truncheon, because like, this guy's violent, I'm going to get the first hit in. And if they interpret something this person says, oh, he's got an Irish accent, he's aggressive, oh, there we go, you're going straight in.
The other thing I think was interesting about the documentation, which is coming out more and more with different, particularly in this tranche, is the willingness of the SDS to do two things. The first thing is that they're willing to report on any industrial dispute and report who the union was, who the union activists were, and potentially look at it as being a public order, calling it a public order issue. previously it was recorded because it would be a subversive issue. But of course, because the security services have said we're not interested in subversion, suddenly spying on trade unions is now a public order issue rather than a subversive issue. So I think that was really interesting. There was a second point, I've forgotten it, but sorry.
I would just say that thing about his excuse for why he infiltrated UCAT, that it was just to get close to Brian Higgins, and his only interest in Brian Higgins, according to him, was his association with the Republican Forum. And he really hung the fact that he was involved in the Republican Forum as almost like he was infiltrating the IRA with some of the reports he gave. But I mean, it was very clear the Republican Forum was just putting on occasional meetings in the London Welsh Centre.
But also, the report, from what I can see from even the documents, the Republican Forum had a wide range of views on the issue of Ireland. So, and the key is in the name. It's a forum. It's not a party. It's not a group. It's like this is a discussion about Irish nationalism, Irish self-determination, etc., etc. And I'm sure it would have had a lot. But of course,
I mean, the fact it was in the London Welsh Centre as well. It's not like this isn't an exclusively like Irish thing.
Well, all Celts together. All Celts together. So I think that was an interesting thing about the he brushed off the idea of, well, I kind of became the chair of the defence campaign, but of course letters were written, he was involved, and that all went into the SDS. So very much, trade unions are still, and they've been covered throughout. And this idea that somehow trade unions are not that they're not interested. We don't cover militant trade union. Clearly they do, either because it's subversive, tranche 1 or 2, or because it's public order, tranche 3, and neither is true. Neither is true. But those are the kind of the Trojan horses to kind of continue to report on trade unions, particularly if there's activists involved in the trade union. Of course, anyone can join a trade union, whether you're an activist or not. And I think that's a feature. But I'm looking at it from if you like, through the lens of my clients. I mean, obviously for Category H, this was a really important witness for them.
Yeah, I mean, like huge, and I think it's been the culmination. It feels like a big culmination as well. I think, Jenna, because I think Alison has just been such a key part of Police Spies Out of Lives, and she's been so supportive to other people who've been going through this process. And I really feel like she, I know she's in the background. Don't worry, she's not on camera. But would you like to say something?
I don't think I've got any energy to say anything.
Okay, go on. Let's pass you the microphone though before you say anything. This is Alison off screen.
I just want to say that I think it's been a very good day. It's been a good couple of weeks. I think, I haven't got much more to say than that. I mean, it is a little bit, could the real Mark Jenner please stand up?
Yeah.
So the jury's out a little bit on which one is the real one.
It was like we were saying before, it was like evidence of two halves.
Two halves, yeah. Almost like he's got a split personality or something like that.
Yeah.
So, I feel very pleased it's over. Very pleased that I've seen him. I feel I'm so impressed by S and the fact that she has been brave enough to come forward. And I think that has been a huge thing in terms of holding him to account.
Yeah.
And I need to sit with it a little bit and think about some of the stuff that he said. I mean, it is shocking, but my favourite bit is the very long list of people written in crayon that he knew, who knew about the relationship. That's what, and I'm really looking forward to Bob Lambert being asked lots of questions.
And the other managers,
the other managers.
The other managers were.
Yeah. The stuff from Israel doesn't make sense. That question that David Barr asked at the end was not the right question. He didn't push on that because, as my understanding it is, we came back from Israel. He had pneumonia. He went straight back to work. I said, how come you're going back to work? You got pneumonia? No, it's fine. Whatever. Going back to work means going back to his wife in code. But S's evidence was that after he came back from Israel, she knew he went to Israel. He then, do you remember? In her evidence, he showed her the pneumonia things. Look, and she thought that was weird. And then she didn't see him for several weeks. So the question is, what was he doing for several weeks? Not 1 week. And he didn't go back. Like, his answer was not true. So and all the stuff about the rockets in the Golan Heights. I don't remember any of that. So that stuff again. That's a question for the managers when they come back. lots of questions. Yeah, but I feel very, very happy, to be honest.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Smashed the ideas of any ideas that I once had of what he looked like and how he was and what kind of person he was. That was all demolished quite effectively yesterday and the day before.
I mean, I was just saying literally just before you came around the corner that this really feels like a culmination.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's marvellous. Happy Hanukkah. Hugs the mayor.
Fair play. Yeah, no, I think like just, like echoing really what Alison said there. I mean, I think, he has been like in many ways the ideal witness for Category H, because he lied a lot. Don't get me wrong, but there was an honesty to his callousness.
Yeah, there was an honesty, and sometimes it was very callous. I think as well there was also weirdly, whether you could call it an honesty, but certainly in the first 2 days of his evidence, it was obvious that why he is an SDS officer to me. It's also obvious that the evidence he gave is very much the standard view of many of the officers, particularly in the SDS, but have kind of maybe, who knows, feigned a kind of concern, whereas actually, particularly the first 2 days of the evidence, he really didn't have any
didn't give a shit
for any of the things. He if you remember, Tom, he referenced on a number of the Justice campaign, he was worried about black youths all the time. But the 2 demonstrations he referred to all passed off. And why did they pass off? Well, because there was good steward and the police left it alone, even though the report was there's going to be flashpoints in this. But it's often demonstrations will steward themselves if the police just not honestly involved.
I mean, I think like so many of the other undercover officers, Mark Jenner really specialized in the exaggeration of perceived risk.
Yeah.
And that goes. I mean, he even said at one point that it's not possible to exaggerate the risk of violence.
Yeah.
That any scintilla of information, possibility of there being any sort of violence meant that he was reporting there was going to be violence.
Perception of risk works on 2 levels. Number one, it definitely justifies the ongoing existence of the SDS, and if you like, Bob Lambert's project, continued involvement. And the second thing is it allows them to be seen as, quote, deep swimmers. If you're a deep swimmer, you're doing your job. The closer you are to risk, which is often misconstrued, misunderstood, completely over the top elaborated, then you're a deep swimmer. And that risk element, and it's absolutely right what you say, exaggerating the risk allows the SDS to continue and allows you to be seen to be doing a good job in inverted commas, obviously.
And this exaggeration of perceived risk has come all the way through to the inquiry. And it's the reason why we've got so many of the officers still with anonymity for their real names, their cover names. The reason that we're not allowed to know the nominals of many of the officers. Most of the officers who he, if you like, threw under a bus, as I said earlier, that he named to the inquiry, we didn't get to hear them. He wrote them on a piece of paper. That list that he made of the officers who knew about the relationship with Alison, that Alison referred to just now, it took him 7 minutes to write that list. Now, we were only allowed to know 2 of the names on it because the rest of them had full anonymity.
The risk has been overplayed. Absolutely massively overplayed.
And I think there's always a question about like the fact that these officers got anonymity. Is it about the risk of what they did when they were deployed, or is it about who they became when they stopped being SDS officers? Because we already know that that senior, because it was an elite unit within Special Branch, but ex-SDS officers often went on to be head of Special Branch. How many went on to much more glittering careers within the police? Is the reason that so many of these officers have got anonymity is because they went on to become chief constables or whatever they went on to do.
Possibly. Heads of whatever, heads of private companies and security and all the rest of it. Absolutely. I mean, who knows? But the issue of risk has been overplayed.
Also, one of the things that you said, one of the reasons why he became an SDS officer, I think he summed that up himself perfectly. When it was put to him, if it had been a crime for him to have sex with activists whilst he was undercover, would he have still had a sexual relationship with Alison? And he said, no, he would never have applied to join the SDS. No, I mean, that says it all.
It does. It was
So as well as being at the end of the questioning of Mark Jenner, I would just say that the further questions, I think Alison kind of covered them all. There was hardly any further questions. So since the last video we did, there's not much extra to add really. But But overall, over this phase, I mean, this phase has lasted what? I don't know, but 3 months anyway. I mean, I don't know how many weeks.
Yes.
It's 32 days of evidence. We've had a wide range of witnesses, both civilian and police. What was your overall takeaway, really, from it all?
Oh my word! It's a really good. Obviously, I haven't been able to come to every day. I've only been able to come to where my clients gave evidence. I think I'm hoping, particularly I was speaking on, for the clients I represent, who were involved in anti-racist and anti-fascist work, that it's completely understood that, one, self-defense was key to and actions, and also violence in self-defense is understood by the inquiry, and that they understand that part of the 90s, particularly around the tragic murder of Stephen Lawrence and Roland Adams and Rohit Dougal, etc., the attacks on Qudus Ali were vicious attacks, and there was so many of them that the BNP were forced to change the strategy precisely because the left got organised. The BNP were trying to control the streets in different parts of the UK, but also in East London and South East London. And the police, from being active at that period of time, were doing very little. And it was the role of the left being organised that pushed it back, that defended communities, that got communities organised, got themselves organised, etc. And I hope the police really, the inquiry really understands that, because that would be my takeaway, that it was an important period for the left, whatever strand of shade of the left you're from, but it was very important that the left got organised to beat back what was, when they talk about squadism, the BNP was exercising squadism and were out and out Nazis and fascists, and they were pushed back, and that was to no thanks of the police at all. Not that necessarily as socialists we would necessarily call on the police, but I hope the inquiry understands that, particularly for my clients, we organised mass campaigns and self-defence, both of the demonstrations we organised and the communities. I want the inquiry to understand that, and understand that the efforts of the SDS were just completely unjustified.
I mean, as well as representing your clients, you mentioned yourself, you were active at the time. There were questions asked about yourself, about your involvement in the away team. In fact, Peter Francis said that you could take care of yourself. Any comment on that?
Well, I think like anybody, if you're attacked, you'd always, no matter who it is,
run as fast as you can. No.
Either you defend yourself, or you run out of the situation. I mean, I've never claimed to be anything else. I've got, just like anybody else, I've got the right to self-defense, and if it's whatever it is, I'll defend my rights just like anybody would. But also, if I would also exit an area if need be as well, because I couldn't. When my wife heard all about this, she couldn't stop laughing, to be honest. It's just, the fact that all this kind of stuff came out. But but having said that, I'm very proud of the role that I played and the people who were part of an organisation that campaigned both in the schools, communities, workplaces against the BNP. I'm very proud of and in fact, in some of the campaigns and some of the speaking and some of the writing that I employed during the whole period has helped me to become, hopefully, an effective lawyer.
I mean, I think that for people who didn't live through the period or weren't politically aware during the time, I mean, maybe don't realize how scary it was in terms of the rise of the far right on the streets, and real violence happening across the UK, racist attacks on the rise. I mean, South East London's been talked about a lot because the SDS were based in London, but I mean, a lot of these things were happening all over the UK.
Absolutely, absolutely, and of course, and it's absolutely right that we focus on the serious crimes, the murders and tragic murders that happened at the time. But I think at the time, in pockets of London and pockets of around the UK, you were having people's windows put in, you're having people being abused and stuff like that. I mean, it was going on quite a lot, and it was a serious attempt by the far right at that time, the British National Party and the National Front to a lesser extent, to organise and control at least elements or parts of the streets. And, I think the fact that, workers, working class communities and socialists and trade unions stood out and organised against and had meetings, all the rest of it was part of the process of doing that. But also crucially is the stewarding of making sure that whether you're organising a demonstration, the people you're wanting to come on the demonstration feel safe. And of course, what was happening is that the left initially was getting attacked, was getting viciously attacked, but that's nothing compared to what ethnic minority communities were put up with on a daily basis, on a nightly basis, in those real serious pockets of and so it was a really scary time. But I think what has come out, I'm hoping that has come out, is that those who campaigned against it were very serious, pushed it back, and took security and self-defense measures also very seriously as well. And that's an important lesson to learn from building movements, whether it's against the far right or otherwise. I
think it's really important. I think one of the great failures, one of the great drawbacks of the inquiry process is that there's not a lot of context. One of the things I've often complained about is, as we're going through the linear nature of the way the inquiry works, that there's whole periods of time where huge events are barely looked at, whereas we've had I feel like I was at Welling in October 93 at this stage, because we've spent a lot. I mean, I'm not saying it's not an important event, but just huge amounts of emphasis on that one event. I'm not saying it's to the detriment of anything else, but an ignorance, ignoring by the inquiry of lots of other big events.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a couple of things that have been focused on, and quite right. They should be focused on Welling, Brick Lane, Earls Court, etc. They should be focused on, of course. And there's loads of other beyond that, and there's been a minutiae around, well, what did you do and how did you do, and justifying the action. But you're absolutely right. There has not been the context that it deserves in terms of the scale of racist attacks during that period, and not having enough voices of those who maybe suffered those attacks being able to give either impact statements or whatever. The inquiry hasn't really reached out to some of the anti-racist organisations we've named. So whether it's GACARA, the Greenwich Action Committee Against Racial Attacks in Greenwich, which I'm sure they could get in contact with, and other monitoring groups, the New Monitoring Project, the Monitoring Group, to have them to maybe get some impact statements of the people who face that kind of stuff on a daily basis. So it has, absolutely right, it's focused on far too much on things which, don't get me wrong, they should be focused on, but they should be at the very least impact statements for those who were facing those regular attacks and being called out and attacked by the BNP and their squads at the time. Absolutely, I think the inquiry should have done more to put the whole thing in context. Some of the Rule 9 statements that I've helped prepare for my clients, we've always tried to put the context in there. But even the inquiry just scoops over that and goes straight to, well, what about this report which said you smiled because this happened? I mean, it's just it kind of pulls it down to such a micro level to the point where you lose out on the bigger picture, which is a shame, really, because that was the context.
And also the way in which that we've had so many times the inquiry has presented a report, asked people about the report, and then said, "Oh, what happened?" And it's like, well, you could. The inquiry could have gone out and checked the contemporaneous media reports, whether it was alternative media or mainstream media or whatever. Not saying that they're factual always or whatever, but there's been a lot of what actually did happen. There was a call very early on in the inquiry process that they should employ an historian to present those kind of facts to actually get to what actually did happen in a lot of these situations.
I also think the other thing the inquiries, I think, to be probably a little bit hypercritical, is the inquiry had a guillotine on people who could apply for core participant status. And I think sometimes, I think those who got core participant status, fine. But people who arrived late were almost like, well, you've come too late. And whereas some people I can see have been turned down for core participant status could have actually played an important role, or potentially an important role in that. But I do think where the weakness has been, particularly just talking about the period which I'm talking about, it's not the only weakness, on the advance of the BNP in certain areas in London and across the world, is I think there should have been more attempts at impact statements from victims or people who were affected by the BNP being in their communities. I would have liked to have seen that a little bit more, but it
is a shame. But I think you know, the way in which the inquiry is developed. I mean, like, some people have got co-participant status but have not been called to be witnesses. I'm thinking here particularly of Dave Smith from the Blacklist Support Group, someone who I think could assist the inquiry a great deal when it comes to the issue of blacklisting. They've decided not to call him for whatever reason. I mean, it's a flawed process, and certainly from my point of view, I'm not expecting anything. I mean, we saw today, you know, that there was a question asked of Mark Jenner about psychometric testing and for future recommendations for how they should recruit undercover officers. And I'm thinking, oh God, I don't want any of that. You know, I'm against undercover. I'm against the police. I'm against the state. Do you know what I mean? I'm against the use of all these things. And you kind of just personally being sat there going like, you know, so what about the recommendations?
If there was recommendations to be got from this inquiry at the end of the process, what would you like to see?
I think abolish the police. I think that would be
okay. I think you're unlikely to get that.
I'm not going to get that.
Any other recommendations?
I mean, I genuinely, I'm when I get to that stage of the report, I will probably stop reading. Like I'm interested in the process. I'm interested in what we find out. When it comes to the bigger cages, longer chains, elements of what the state does, you know, I mean,
I think in terms of people, just going back to the point you make about people who are co-participants and are not being called to give evidence, I think that is a real shame, because we have, you know, I think some of the evidence could be done in some of the co-participants who could be done in half a day. I think we've spent a lot of time in the early years of you know, having problems with, I think, with the police and the process, etc. So I would have liked to seen that. I think there have been from my own personal experience, my own client's experience, I think one of my clients who's not giving evidence, Dave Nellist, absolutely should be given evidence. You know, he's on the True Spies. West Midland Police say, yeah, we had someone in his parliamentary office. We've seen, as we said in our Rule 9, that a file was opened on him at the point where he was elected. You know, so there's something going on there. There's something, an MP, a Labour MP, a Socialist Labour MP, he's been elected in '83, and a special branch file is open the year he's elected. It's a bit. Isn't that a bit of a concern, a worry? Even if the inquiry is really interested in the democratic process, then why are MPs being spied on? I'm not saying that should be a focus, but it is an interesting aspect as well. I'm purely speaking from a personal point of view as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you make that point about, like, so many of the co-participants could be called to give evidence for half a day. I mean, they could be given short amounts of time, to be perfectly honest. I'm reminded of, this time last year, Claire Hildreth, who was questioned by the inquiry. She ended up, her slot was pushed back, and it ended up being very late in the evening that she came in, and she was down for half a day.
That's right.
She was asked a bunch of questions about her background and where she's from, and she was like, yep, nope, whatever. Wasn't interested. Got to the meat of what actually she was, the particular part of the deployment of Andy Coles that she was there to talk about. She answered very fulsome on those issues. We were done in an hour and a half. She'd given all the evidence that was actually pertinent, that was important. She didn't feel the need to give any personal biography of herself. And you think, well, this could be done with. So you know, we could get through loads of witnesses if that approach was taken.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
I don't understand why not.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the other thing is, I think more witnesses should have been allowed to provide detailed statements. And the one thing I would like to see is a recommendation. I know you're not for recommendations, but one thing I would like to see as recommendations is, I think every core participant should be given their file.
Yeah, I mean, fuck yeah. I mean, like, yeah.
Whether it's now or at the end of the process, every registered core participant should be given the totality of their file. Absolutely, at the end of this, whether it's the end but you know, at some point, the totality of their file should be given to them without exception. You know, warts and all. You know,
I mean, I would echo that, and I would echo all the calls. I mean, I was being quite glib, I guess, earlier about that thing. I mean, I think there is something. I mean, I don't want to get too much into the sort of whatever of it, bigger cages, longer chains. We do want to enlarge the floor of the cage, in terms of like kind of the ability we have as people and the state. And I think yes. I mean, like, I think like naming all the undercover officers, I don't understand why I do understand why, because it's such a corrupt system, but I think the fact that they've been given so much anonymity is an absolute disgrace. And I think at the end of this process, when it's established that they have exaggerated the perceived risk to the point to pull the wool over the eyes of the inquiry process, they should all be named. In full. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And we should all, and not just co-participants, the entire country should get all their registry files. We should have that.
I absolutely agree with that. But, I think as an absolute minimum, everybody, everyone who's a co-participant should be getting their files. And speaking as a lawyer who's got a file, I should be also getting.
And that should be the first file to be released. We've come to the end of phase 1. We're back again now on 2nd of February.
With my client.
Yeah. Well, so what are you looking forward to in phase 2?
Well, that's a good question. I can only speak for my clients. So I've got 3 clients. I've got Joe Batty, who was a member of the Socialist Party, and he'll be talking about HN 104, Carlo Saracchi. There'll be my client, Chris Nynham, who is one of the leaders of the Stop the War Coalition. His officer, Simon Wellings. And Lois will be coming back. Lois Austin will be coming back. And she'll be being, as I understand it, will be being asked additional questions around May Day and the May Day protest, I think, in 2001. So those I'll be particularly interested in the 2 officers who my clients are involved in, which is Carlo Saracchi and Simon Welling. So really interested in that. I'm so looking forward, and not trying to jump too far ahead. I think module 2, when we get to the senior officers, managers, senior civil servants, and potentially government ministers, that is going to be it'll be interesting to see how the inquiry deals with anonymity, privacy, etc. around those issues.
And how far they go up. I mean, that's one of the big questions.
How far? I think that's one big question for everybody who is a core participant is how far does it go up? And also, who will be called to account for the ongoing abuses, whether they be the spying on the Lawrence family, the women affected, and all the core participants who ultimately has been not so much pulling the strings, but seems to be going, business as usual, please carry on. Are the Home Secretaries going to be called? Well, when you got this, well, did you just sign it off? What did you know about it? Surely you did know. Well, if you didn't know, why didn't you know? I really will be interested in that, but of course that's summer next year, as you know. Call
the Home Secretaries, all of them.
Absolutely.
Yes, the next phase, we are meant to be hearing from Carlo Saracchi. We are meant to be hearing from Rob Hastings. We're meant to be hearing from Simon Welling. I'm trying to remember the other names of undercover officers. I can't remember. There's so many. There's so many. That's assumed they actually do come through.
Absolutely.
We've had some comments. So the Campaign Opposed Police Surveillance said Jenner's admission that he took a pack of lies to police risk assessors in 2011 is huge. How many others did the same? And because they haven't been outed by the women they abused, got believed and given anonymity by the inquiry. I think this is a massive thing, because I think that 2011 refusal to answer questions by Jenner really shows how just how far they're willing to go.
It's also how far you're willing to go to protect your pension and get the hell out of there quick. Get out, get your pension and leave. And so somebody does actually watch this.
Oh yeah, people are watching. There's 184 people watching right now. No, we do have viewers. I would, many of the people who join me on these videos don't believe anybody watches. So I mean, if you could show that people do watch by commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing the video with your friends, please do. I mean, I think that was quite telling, because I think that is the case. I think that particularly during the first 5 years of the inquiry, there was an acceptance at face value of the lies of undercover officers, and that gave them the opportunity to have anonymity. And it has been the officers who have been exposed by activists who have been dragged into the light. And it isn't the inquiry process that has done that. It's activists who've done that, and then the inquiry has played catch up.
I'd love to know. I mean, maybe I'm being a bit too optimistic, but I often wonder, and you're absolutely right that all the anonymity was all guaranteed beforehand. Maybe that was just to get the thing off the ground. And I kind of sometimes wonder whether the inquiry legal team kind of think, we've been conned here. We actually were conned, because as the inquiry's gone through its different tranches, if you like, I think it's become more apparent that, actually the activists were probably telling the truth here, and they've been the most transparent, giving evidence, and have often laid their own lives bare in order to get to some kind of truth and justice.
I mean, when it comes to engagement with the inquiry, it's night and day. I mean, whether it's whether we're talking about individual members of the public who are spied upon, or the way that they're dealing with the inquiry through their registered legal representatives, compare that to not just the undercover cops, but the police themselves, the Home Office. Every one of the state police corps participants in this inquiry has done they've brought numerous judicial reviews. They have dragged their feet. They now know. They have been incredibly, they've obstructed the inquiry process repeatedly.
However, what we can say is that, for notwithstanding all that, and you're absolutely right, Tom, not disagreeing with you, but having said all that, I think for the activists, there's been a sense of having the opportunity to tell their truth, or to actually set the record straight on different levels, but also to understand what's been written about them, what's been reported about them. But also, I think, certainly speaking for my clients, it's also to understand there's nothing to fear here. Nothing, mass movements and campaigns, whether local, national, or even international, you're not doing anything wrong. You're on the right side of history, if you like, and this is just from my personal perspective, the capitalist state doing what the capitalist state does, which is to defend the interests of the ruling class.
Exactly, and then that's the point, isn't it?
On my
but I think this is the key point, isn't it? Is that we were doing nothing wrong, but we have got a parasitic class of aristocracy on this planet for whom the entire planet is a resort, and we're all staff. And anybody who pushes up against that and calls it out and tries to build a movement to oppose it is the worst kind of criminal they could possibly imagine, and needs to be absolutely smashed. And what the SDS were was just one small part of the infrastructure of repression that the state employs to stop there ever being a popular movement against that exploitation by the aristocracy.
I don't think I can add to that. I think you're far more articulate than I can be. So I think that's maybe a good part to end.
Yeah, we've come to the end. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think the final thing is I am looking forward to part two, phase two. The one thing I'm hoping will happen in part two is my name is not mentioned. That's the one thing I'm hoping for.
Fair enough. All right, well, thanks for joining us. I do a Twitter Spaces audio report of each day. I normally do that each evening. Because there's no hearing tomorrow, I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm going to meet everybody in the pub now. I'm still off the booze, believe it or not, which, mad. But I'm very pleased that we've come to the end of the hearings for a bit. We're back on the 2nd of February. I'll try and do a catch up over the next couple of weeks of all the bits and pieces I've missed out on. I intend to make a lot more videos than I ended up making of the recaps, the little short ones. I'll try and do some of those. If anybody's able to support me, you can go to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Tom B. Fowler. The links are all on all my social media, and you're able to support me by buying me a coffee if you'd like to. I totally understand if you haven't got money for it. But have a cool Yule, everyone, and we'll see you all in 2026. Bye for now.